sewage and garbage, the two unlovely ingredients of household waste, domestic waste, the muck that you and I produce more of every year. At the moment, we throw 2 pounds weight into the dustbin alone every day for each man, woman and child. Scientists say that it'll be double that inside 20 years.
The problem is where to put it all. The usual answer to that is simple. You either burn it or you dump it in holes in the ground or on heaps just as quickly as you can. But there are just a few places that take the view that a good deal of what goes into your dustbin or down your drain is well worth recovering for use again as raw materials to make new products.
And nowhere is more conscious of this than Worthing, tidy-minded Worthing. The average age here is high, and there are many people who remember the war. Salvage worked then, it can work now. Worthing's 1970 war on waste is fought on well-tried wartime principles. Making the most of rubbish is Worthing's magnificent obsession. Every year, the borough engineer sends out 35,000 Christmas cards to his partners, the householders. They expect service, and they get it. Some experts say that door-to-door collection is on the way out. None of that here. The salvage crews, as Worthing prefers to call its dustmen, still tramp up the garden path to bring the personal touch to their work. In return, they've got the people on their side.
Here's the beer. Fresh.
Thank you very much.
There's the paper there for you.
That's very nice of you.
The glowing friendship between the town people and their dustmen is a productive relationship. Stage one of the struggle for salvage is done by the people themselves when they separate their waste paper from the rest of their rubbish.
Boys wouldn't like a drink?
If it's not separated here, it'll be too expensive to do it later. At the moment, Britain imports 1,000 tons of waste paper every week to make into new paper. If every town collected its waste paper like this, there'd be less importing, or none at all. And not only that, every one of these bales brings in 25 shillings. All the rest of what goes into Worthing's dustbins ends up here, in the entrance hall of the hygiene unit, as it's called, in a mixed-up mess. Some local authorities think it's fit for nothing better than destruction or tipping. Waste Not, Want Not Worthing doesn't agree.
The richer the town, the richer the garbage. In places where most of the houses still have coal fires, much of the rubbish winds up as ash in the dustbin. But in affluent places like Worthing, where coal fires are rare and central heating is comparatively common, you get affluent garbage. This is a prime load of rich southern rubbish. Future archaeologists will pick through this and know that this is the leavings of the rich Worthing tribe, as opposed to, say, the poor Salford tribe. They're the ones who won the nationwide Fickle Finger of Filth Award, you may remember.
Here comes the Worthing stuff. And as you can see, somebody hasn't been pulling her weight at separating her waste paper, because quite a lot of it's gone into the dustbins and wound up here. Now it's too late to save it, but it's not too late to take the cinders and some of the dust away. The dust goes to make bricks. And so it goes on. Now it's the turn of the tin cans, nearly 2 tons of them every day. They go back to the smelting works to be born again. By this stage, we're getting down to the finer points of Worthing rubbish, and this is a job for sharp eyes and quick fingers.
What we're looking for here is things that have got through the system so far but are still worth saving and can be picked off the belt without stopping it, because that would slow down the whole process and cost money. We're looking for things like scrap metal. That can be collected up and actually sold for scrap. Old bottles, they're worth saving. They can be used again in many cases. And even bones. They apparently are used in the making of soap.
What's left after this is the lowest of the low, the untouchable. They call it the tailings. But in Worthing, they've even found a friend for this, sewage. Though it travels by a different route, the sewage ends up by meeting the garbage in the hygiene unit. Sewage sludge rolls off the carpet machine to keep the appointment. And the theory is that the sludge and the tailings spend 5 days honeymooning together in this heated cylinder and then emerge, joined forever, as compost. From dustbins and lavatories to parks and gardens. It seems almost too good to be true. Is the compost you produced here really good stuff?
Yes, it is.
What do you use it for?
Well, largely for landscaping. For instance, you'll see over there we have got an open face of a tip, and we shall place our compost on the top and get a beautiful grass bank full of trees planted round, very similar to the we've done here in the lower section.
Now that's using compost for growing grass and trees.
Yes.
What about for growing food? Does it have any use there?
Well, as a matter of fact, we're now in the throes of quite a large experiment in this connection. And I'm very hopeful of it being quite successful.
I know that London have tried producing compost and they found that theirs is too toxic for growing food.
Well, Worthing is a little different in location than London, of course, and what we have here is only light industry, and therefore, consequently, the trade wastes and so on that come into the sewers and so forth are very much less, I should imagine, than a highly industrialised area.
So Worthing's rubbish should be a lot less poisonous than London's, in fact.
Oh yes, I would think so.
Worthing finds another use for sewage too. It doesn't just spew it into the sea untreated, which is what some of its neighbours on the south coast do. Worthing turns it into gas, methane gas. In this murky pool, solid sewage sinks to the bottom and slips through pipes to tanks where it's cooked to give enough gas to make all the electricity that's needed to power the whole plant. So what's left at the end of Worthing's way with waste? From the sewage, there's just this. It's a relatively harmless liquid, and it does go into the sea. Now, it might be a lot cleaner than the stuff that some of Worthing's neighbours are pumping into the channel, but it would be better if they could find something else to do with it. From the garbage, all that's left is the stubborn stuff that's refused to break down into compost, even though it's been cooked. Stuff like plastic. Durable, useful, practical, but utterly impossible to make use of once it's been thrown away. 1/3 of what went into Worthing's dustbins is falling through this grid as compost. Another third has been salvaged. And the remaining third, the things that aren't worth salvaging and won't make compost, go down the chute and end up on a tip. Disappointingly, they can't make all their rubbish disappear, and even here there are houses that look out onto tips. But the tips are smaller than they would be. If Worthing didn't use its salvage system, it would have to bury another 7 acres of land under a 6-foot thick carpet of refuse. But it must be possible to tip less and salvage even more than they do.
We've always got this under review, of course, but there's reaches a stage where economics operate.
It would just cost too much to put
It
more
would
men
just
into
cost
the plant.
too much.
But it does look as though, with all that expensive plant running here, you might save a lot of money if you simply burnt your rubbish like a lot of other people do.
I don't think this is so. Worthing looked into the whole matter very fully, and certainly for Worthing, the system that we operate here is the best one. You see, if you had a destructor for burning, you would still have a big plant.
Worthing's hygiene unit kills many birds with one stone. It saves land from tipping, it gets rid of sewage and makes use of it, it salvages raw materials and makes money by selling them. And even if there are still some tips at the end of the process, Worthing has a knack of making use even of them. This playground was the town's last rubbish dump. Once it was an ugly wasteland, but the borough engineer consulted his grandchildren, and together they came up with this Worthing solution. 10 years ago it was marshland and garbage. Now it's once round the lake for the kids. Worthing's particular methods wouldn't be practical in all towns. Every town has its own special problems with waste depending on population, size and industry. But Worthing's approach to rubbish does have a lesson for other places. At the moment we're spending £200 million a year on our waste disposal industries. There's no national policy, there's little coordination, and there's not much sign of any constructive thinking. It might not be a bad thing if more towns would tackle their rubbish with the Worthing touch.